Welcome, restless souls, to Carmen's Crypt. I'm Carmen Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carmen's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes alive. This is Carmen's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. Lily traced her fingers over the spare key hidden behind the loose brick in Jason's porch column. 2 years of memories flooded her mind as she stood in the darkness. She remembered the first time he had shown her this hiding spot, during their sophomore year when they had gotten caught in a thunderstorm after a movie date. They had run to his house, laughing and soaked to the bone, and he had retrieved this key with a flourish, declaring it was time she knew where it was just in case. That had been the night she first knew she loved him. They had sat on his back porch watching the lightning, wrapped in towels and drinking hot chocolate, talking until sunrise about their dreams, fears, and futures. Jason had told her about losing his mother to cancer when he was 12, and how he had decided to become an oncologist because of it. Lily had shared her own fears about following her passion for art instead of the practical business degree her parents wanted. Since then, there had been countless nights spent studying together in his room, with Lily sketching in her notebook while Jason memorized medical terminology. Movie marathons where they fell asleep on the couch, only to be awakened by his dad making pancakes the next morning. Holiday dinners where his family had welcomed her like she had always belonged there. Even his stepmom Linda treated her like a daughter, teaching her old family recipes and sharing embarrassing stories about Jason's childhood. Their relationship wasn't perfect. They had had their share of fights, like the big one last month when Jason had forgotten their anniversary because he was studying for finals. But they had always worked through their problems. That's why these past 3 weeks had been so hard. Jason had never been away this long before, and even though they texted constantly, it wasn't the same as having him here. Lily pulled out her phone and looked at their last exchange from earlier that day. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," she had written. His response had been typically Jason, a string of heart emojis, followed by, "Not if I see you first." She smiled at the screen, imagining his face when he woke up to find her there. Taking a deep breath, Lily slipped the key into the lock. The familiar click reminded her of all the times she had let herself in before, always with Jason's knowledge and permission, of course. This was different, but she tried to quiet the small voice of doubt in her head. After all, what kind of girlfriend would she be if she didn't surprise her boyfriend when he came home early from a family trip? Lily's footsteps echoed softly against the wooden stairs as she made her way up to Jason's bedroom. The house was pitch black, except for the pale blue moonlight filtering through the windows, casting shadows across the walls. She knew she probably shouldn't be here. Sneaking into her boyfriend's house at 2 a.m. wasn't exactly girlfriend of the year behavior. But after 3 weeks apart, while he was supposedly visiting family, she couldn't wait until morning to surprise him. She had seen his car in the driveway when she pulled up, the silver Honda Civic gleaming under the streetlights. His parents were away at their lake house for the weekend, which made this the perfect opportunity. Lily had been planning this surprise for days, ever since Jason texted saying he was coming home early from visiting his mother's family. The third step from the top creaked. It always did, and Lily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. But the house remained silent, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning. She could see Jason's bedroom door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar. A smile played across her lips as she imagined his reaction when he woke up to find her there. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before her as she crept forward, careful to avoid the spots she knew would groan under her weight. After dating Jason for almost 3 years, she knew this house almost as well as her own. She knew which floorboards would betray her presence, which doors needed an extra push to open quietly, and exactly how many steps it took to reach Jason's room from the top of the stairs. 15 steps. She had counted them countless times before. The door didn't make a sound as she pushed it open wider. Moonlight spilled across Jason's bed, illuminating the lumpy form beneath the covers. Lily could see the steady rise and fall of breathing, and her heart swelled with anticipation. She slipped off her shoes and carefully set her purse down by the door. The air felt different in here, thicker somehow, with an unfamiliar scent she couldn't quite place. Not Jason's usual cologne, but something mustier, earthier. She dismissed the thought. He had been away for weeks. Maybe he had switched brands. Lily patted across the carpet, her sock-covered feet silent against the plush surface. The figure in the bed didn't stir as she approached. Jason had always been a heavy sleeper, one of the many endearing things about him that made this surprise possible. She carefully lifted the corner of the comforter and slid underneath, trying not to disturb the sleeping form beside her. The bed felt different too, harder than she remembered, with sheets that seemed rougher against her skin. But it had been 3 weeks since she'd last been here. Maybe her memory was playing tricks on her. Lily snuggled closer to the warm body next to her, breathing in deeply. The strange scent was stronger now, almost overwhelming. She wrinkled her nose, wondering again about the unfamiliar smell. But she was here now, and all she wanted to do was curl up next to Jason and surprise him when he woke up. The figure shifted slightly, and Lily held her breath, wondering if she had woken him. But the breathing remained steady and deep. She relaxed, letting her own eyes drift close as she settled in to wait for morning. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her back pocket. Lily's eyes flew open. Who would be texting her at this hour? She carefully extracted the phone, trying not to move too much. The screen's harsh light made her squint as she checked the notification. It was Jason. Her blood ran cold as she read the message. "Hey babe, just landed in Chicago. Layover delayed. Won't be home until tomorrow afternoon. Miss you." Lily's entire body went rigid. Her lungs seemed to forget how to draw breath. Slowly, terrifyingly slowly, she turned her head to look at the figure lying next to her in the darkness. The steady breathing had stopped. For one endless moment, Lily lay perfectly still, her mind refusing to process what was happening. Then she felt the mattress shift as the figure beside her began to move. Lily exploded out of the bed, her phone clattering to the floor as she scrambled backward. Her foot caught in the twisted sheets, and she went down hard, her elbow cracking against the bedside table. Pain shot up her arm, but adrenaline drowned it out as she fought to free herself from the tangled bedding. The figure sat up. In the moonlight, streaming through the window, Lily could see a grotesque form of decay. Blackened, leathery skin, pulled tight over protruding bones, patches missing to reveal the yellow skeleton beneath. The torso was bloated, splits in the rotting flesh seeping dark fluid into the sheets. As it turned toward her, she saw the face, sunken eye sockets crawling with tiny white shapes, the nose completely gone, leaving a dark cavity in the center. The jaw hung at an impossible angle, tendons long since deteriorated, revealing a grinning row of exposed teeth. Some fallen, others loose and decaying gums. The stench of putrefaction rolled off in waves. A scream built in her throat, but terror had frozen her vocal cords. She finally kicked free of the sheets and scrambled to her feet, nearly falling again in her desperate rush to reach the door. Behind her, she heard the rustle of bedding as the figure moved. Lily burst into the hallway, her sock-covered feet slipping on the hardwood floor. She could hear heavy footsteps behind her now, accompanied by a sound that might have been breathing, but reminded her more of wind howling through dead trees. The 15 steps to the stairs became 3 frantic bounds. She missed the first step entirely, her foot finding empty air instead of solid ground. For one horrible moment, she was falling forward into darkness. Her hand caught the railing at the last second, and she used the momentum to swing herself around the corner of the staircase. The thing from the bed was at the top of the stairs now. Lily didn't look back, couldn't look back, but she could feel its presence like a physical weight pressing down on her. The air had grown thick and cold, that earthy smell now so strong it made her gag. She took the rest of the stairs 3 and 4 at a time, barely keeping her balance. Her elbow throbbed where she had hit it, and she could feel warm liquid running down her arm. The front doors seemed miles away as she sprinted across the living room, knocking over a lamp in her desperate flight. The crash of breaking glass behind her told her the thing was on the stairs now. Its footsteps were impossibly fast, impossibly heavy, shaking the entire house with each impact. Lily reached the front door and yanked on the handle. It didn't budge. She had locked it behind her when she came in. Of course she had. She always did. It was automatic after 3 years of visiting this house. Her trembling fingers scrabbled at the deadbolt, seemingly taking years to find the lock and turn it. She could hear the footsteps getting closer, could smell that horrible earthen stench growing stronger. The door finally swung open, and Lily burst out into the night air. She didn't stop to close it behind her, didn't pause to look for her car. She just ran, her feet pounding against the sidewalk as she sprinted down the suburban street. Each streetlight she passed seemed dimmer than the last, the shadows between them growing longer and darker. She ran until her lungs were on fire, until the only sound she could hear was her own ragged breathing and the slap of her sock-covered feet against the pavement. Finally, she slowed enough to risk a glance behind her. The street was empty. Lily stopped, doubling over as she tried to catch her breath. Her whole body was shaking, and her elbow was definitely bleeding where she had hit it. As her panic began to subside, rational thought started to creep back in. Her phone, her purse, her shoes, and her car, all still at Jason's house. Jason's house, where something had been sleeping in his bed, where something had chased her down the stairs and through the living room, where something might still be waiting. With trembling fingers, Lily patted her pockets, praying she'd somehow manage to grab her phone in her panic. Nothing. She looked around, trying to get her bearings in the unfamiliar part of the neighborhood. She needed to find help, needed to call Jason, needed to figure out what the hell had just happened. A few houses down, she could see lights on in a window. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lily hurried toward the house. As she approached the front door, she noticed a police car parked in the driveway. Relief flooded through her as she rang the doorbell. A middle-aged woman answered, concern evident on her face as she took in Lily's disheveled appearance and bleeding arm. Behind her, a police officer stepped into view. "Please," Lily gasped, her voice hoarse from running. "Please, I need help. There's something in my boyfriend's house. Something was in his bed. I thought it was him, but he's in Chicago and—" "Slow down," the officer said, stepping forward. "Take a breath. What's the address?" Lily told them, watching as the officer and the woman exchanged a look she couldn't quite read. "That house has been empty for months," the woman said slowly. Ever since that terrible accident with that young couple, Lily felt the world tilt sideways. "No," she said. "No, that's not right. My boyfriend lives there. Jason Anderson. I was just there. I just ran from there." "Jason Anderson?" The officer's face had gone pale. "Miss, Jason Anderson and his girlfriend, Lily Matthews, Died in a house fire there 3 months ago." Lily's legs gave out. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was her own reflection in the storm door's glass, her face pale and ghostly in the porch light, her clothes covered in ash instead of blood, and behind her, at the end of the street, a familiar silver Honda Civic that seemed to flicker like a mirage in the darkness. When Jason Anderson returned home the next evening, he found his house exactly as he'd left it 3 weeks ago. The only signs that anything was amiss were a single pair of women's shoes by his bedroom door and an ash-covered phone on his bedroom floor. Moonlight spilled across his bed, illuminating the lumpy form beneath the covers. A smile spread across his face as he watched the steady rise and fall of breathing, and his heart swelled with anticipation. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carmen's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carmen's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.